Hello and welcome to this, the very last Daily Planet. So the call has gone out. Today scientists from all nations and from across a wide range of disciplines have spoken, loud and clear, with the first ever State of the Planet declaration. It says, research has now shown the continued functioning of the Earth system is at risk, and it warns society must not delay taking urgent and large-scale action. Strong words, powerfully delivered. But is the world listening? Hello there, my name is Julian Rush, and in the next half hour we take a look back at what's been achieved here at the Planet Under Pressure conference. We'll bring you the results of new research that reveals that some of the world's biggest cities are threatened with drowning, not from sea levels rising as a result of melting ice sheets, but by sinking land. And we'll take a closer look at the key science initiative to come from the conference, Future Earth. So, Planet Under Pressure is nearly over. And the most visible evidence of what's been achieved here is the declaration published this morning. It's on the website for you to read, and it'll go forward to the world's leaders at Rio+20 in June. But behind the formality of the carefully chosen words of the declaration, what does it actually mean in practice? And how will it be used and received in Rio de Janeiro? To discuss this and to look back over the highlights of Planet Under Pressure, I'm joined by the co-chairs, Lidia Brito and Mark Stafford Smith, and by Elizabeth Thompson, the Executive Coordinator of Rio+20. Welcome to all of you. What is it that makes the declaration that's been made at this conference so unique and so important?
Well, I hope that Planet Under Pressure isn't coming to an end, both in the metaphorical and the real sense. We're certainly here to try and make sure the planet itself doesn't come to an end. But also, this declaration, I think, is very much about trying to set the pathway forwards from here where we go, so that it doesn't end at the end of today. And I think the two sort of high-level things in it are firstly, a real need for us to build on the last decade of really new scientific understanding about how the whole planet operates as a global system and our part in it. To build on that, to really re-energise or rebuild or construct afresh the engagement between science and society, and particularly between science and policy making, to really assist a sort of global innovation system. And part of that then is some fairly concrete, so we have some fairly concrete proposals that have come out there, but also then some concrete implications for the whole Rio process, which perhaps Lidia would like to mention here.
Lidia, what is it for you that's important?
No, clearly that I think the declaration is strengthening or is stressing something that the scientific community has said before, even in preparation to this conference, through the policy briefings, that the time to act is now. Time is probably what we have running out faster than we can imagine. And I think that's a strong message to take to Rio. But it means that we have to continue our engagement in the negotiation and preparation processes to Rio+20. And what we are planning to do is clearly to use all the opportunities we have to pass these messages with very strong evidence that was really coming out strongly in this conference, so that our policymakers can really have also, as it was said just in the last panel, could have a common fact to act. And I think that the opportunity that the preparatory process have given to the scientific community is really great, and we hope, Elizabeth, that we continue to have this engagement.
Elizabeth Thompson, how do you think this declaration will play out at Rio+20? Will it be making a significant contribution to the thinking and the decision-making there?
Yes. And in that regard, I really want to congratulate the conveners of Planet Under Pressure, Mark and Lidia, and the other organisations involved for what has been an excellent effort. It is going to influence the real outcome in several ways. First, I think it does give credence to some of the recommendations already contained in the negotiating text that seek to have policy decisions informed by science and that seek to embed within the UN institution itself better mechanisms for integrating the use of science for the UN's decision making and for global decision making at the policy level. In addition, because there is such a powerful lobby and momentum coming from Planet Under Pressure, there is something else at which policymakers can look. It also, I think, will influence the way in which the Sustainable Development Goals or the dialogue around Sustainable Development Goals is proceeding and informed in that considerations of what the planetary boundaries are, what are the critical thresholds, how do we continue to live, work, operate, do business, and still have an acceptable quality of life, eradicate poverty, and achieve sustainable development will all be informed by solid science underpinning the actions that we take and the policy decisions that are made, and in fact how those decisions are implemented. So yes, this has been a tremendous opportunity for us. I think it's one that we are going to seize in the UN system and at Rio. I'm very grateful to them.
I asked at the beginning, is the world listening? You think it is? Do you think the world is listening to you?
Well, as you know, we have some 3,000 people here, but there's another 5,000 or so watching online and a couple of million tweet links, whatever implications that has. But beyond that, I think there's been a very large amount of newspaper coverage, which is encouraging. Even headlines like "Epocalypse" in the Sun here in the UK, which I mean is reaching with the right general idea of the message to an audience that doesn't normally hear things from a science conference. So I think there has been a lot of outreach here. There is still a lot of work to do, and no one should shy away from that reality.
Well, let's talk about talking of outreach. Let's see if we can make contact with the Birla Industrial and Technology Museum in Calcutta, in India, who are on Skype. They have a couple of questions for you. Let's see if they can hear us and they can join us and add their comments to the conversation here. Do we have India? No, we've lost India, unfortunately. Never mind, the technology has failed us. Lidia, what for you has been the real highlight of this conference?
I think they were, if allow me, let me give you 2-3 highlights. I have to say that one of the things that for me it's an amazing accomplishment is the preparation itself. The amount of involvement of the scientific community, of the different programs, of the policy makers, of industry, to really engage in different levels of the organization. It's already an incredible sign that we have to seize the moment, because we are ready to talk, we are ready to construct. The second thing that I think was quite important was precisely going from where we are, what we know about the planet, what can we do about it. And what's...
I think it's that focus on solutions, isn't it? That
yes.
has been, I think, for me, one of the
yes,
real
and clearly
achievements here.
that for us, I think, Mark, has been remarkable, because we discussed a lot about this. And I think it was, yes, and it was a very interesting way of discussing science and policy. And I hope we don't miss that.
Elizabeth Thompson, is the world at Rio+20 ready to hear these solutions and perhaps begin adopting them, make the decisions necessary to start adopting the solutions that we've heard coming out of this?
I believe it is, because the level of dialogue is broadening, because all over the world people have marched in relation to current conditions, because people have occupied Wall Street and other locations, because there has been an Arab Spring, and all of it has been saying, let us have sustainable development. We want development, but we want it sustainably. We also want a larger share in our democracy and how we are governed. We want to have a greater stake. So yes, people are listening because they want to have greater input. I think that there is also a significant new innovation in the way the conference is going to be organized that I'd like to share with you. And it is that Brazil, in the 3 days immediately preceding the high-level convening of the governments, Brazil is going to have a global dialogue with Nobel laureates, thought leaders, the NGO community, a large number of people. But what is innovative is that it is going to be done in addition to physically at Rio, online. And people all over the world are going to be able to come into these dialogues, make contributions, and vote on what they think some of the policymakers should be doing, the way forward, and the solutions that they want to see employed.
Genuinely is innovative, a truly global democratic way of doing policy. That's a fantastic idea. We look forward to taking that, look forward to you guys going forward to Rio+20, and hope that the world there is listening. Thank you all very much indeed for joining us on the Daily Planet. And before we move on, let's have a reminder of why we're all here and why we've all been here and why today's declaration is so important. We are, it is widely agreed, living in a new geological era, the Anthropocene, defined because mankind is now having such a huge effect on the Earth's systems that the evidence will be laid down in the rocks for future geologists to find. Welcome to the Anthropocene.
This is the story of how one species changed a planet. The latest chapter of our story begins in England 250 years ago. Fueled by coal, then oil, several brilliant inventions appeared. They ignited the Industrial Revolution, which spread like wildfire through Europe, North America, Japan, then elsewhere. The great railways, then cars and highways, connected people across the globe. Medical discoveries saved millions of lives. New artificial fertilizers meant we could feed more people. Population rose rapidly. But this was nothing compared with what was to come. The 1950s marked the beginning of the Great Acceleration. Globalization, marketing, tourism, and huge investments helped fuel enormous growth. People swarmed to cities, which became even more powerful engines of creativity. In a single lifetime, the well-being of millions has improved beyond measure. Health, wealth, security, longevity, never have so many had so much. Yet 1 billion are malnourished. In a single lifetime, we have grown into a phenomenal global force. We move more sediment and rock annually than all natural processes, such as erosion and rivers. We manage 3/4 of all land outside the ice sheets. Greenhouse gas levels this high have not been seen for over 1 million years. Temperatures are increasing. We have made a hole in the ozone layer. We are losing biodiversity. Many of the world's deltas are sinking due to damming, mining, and other causes. Sea level is rising. Ocean acidification is a real threat. We are altering Earth's natural cycles. We have entered the Anthropocene, a new geological epoch dominated by humanity. This relentless pressure on our planet risks unprecedented destabilization. But our creativity, energy, and industry offer hope. We have shaped our past. We are shaping our present. We can shape our future. You and I are part of this story. We are the first generation to realize this new responsibility. As the population grows to 9 billion, we must find a safe operating space for humanity, for the sake of future generations. Welcome to the Anthropocene.
And if you want to see that video again, it is on the Planet Under Pressure website. Now, for me, looking back over this conference, a number of key issues have stood out. First, the dramatic strides that have been made in the social sciences and the understanding of human society since I reported from the original Earth Summit in Rio 20 years ago. It means that we now do know what to do to change policies and behaviour to a more sustainable model. And secondly, it's the real urgency of the need to change the way the world does economics. You've heard some of it a little earlier in the plenary session today. greening economics by changing what's measured and the value systems that go with economics is, it seems to me, absolutely fundamental. So it's a pleasure to talk now with Priya Shyamsundar from India. She's the Programme Director of the South Asian Network for Development and Environmental Economics. Welcome. It seems that we do now know what to do. You know, we need new indicators for economics, for measuring things beyond GDP. We need to integrate social and environmental measures as well. But it is trying to change an economic mindset, a way of thinking that's been built up over a long, long time. How amenable is the world economic community, do you think, to making those changes?
Well, somebody said earlier today that the market is not moral, and it depends on us on how we want to make the market work for a better world. Clearly, right now, there are problems with how the entire system and all of us are working within that system, and we can't afford to move along the same lines. We do know some things. We do know how to fix some things. We do know that if you fix incentives, for example, that behavioral change will follow. We don't quite know how to fix those incentives, particularly in participatory democracies, because people have different opinions and ideas about what they're willing to be regulated on, where they're willing to be taxed, and so on. For example, British Columbia has a carbon tax, which is revenue neutral, but will there be other parts of Canada or the US willing to take these on? But if we could put the right incentives in place, then the behavioral change would follow, but we need to have the dialogue on that. That's where sort of the discussion and the consensus needs to emerge, that we need to make it happen, and then it will follow.
How do countries in the developing world that are crucial to all of this, as they develop, as they seek to grow and achieve many of the wealth that they perceive that the rich countries, the West, the North, has got, is there a willingness there to change the way they do economics? Or is it proving to be hard to persuade them not to adopt the Western capitalist model, if you like, because it seems so attractive?
It's not a this or that sort of situation in the developing world. You know, everybody wants to grow and get to a better standard of life.
Indeed.
We have 1.1 billion people living under the $1.25 poverty line. We can't live with that as a society. So we need to figure out ways to make that go away, the poverty. But on the other hand, if there are ways in which we can develop which are less expensive, if there are leapfrogging technologies that we can adapt, then of course the developing world, India, any of these countries are willing to do it. We are craving for efficiencies, because being inefficient is costly. Energy is expensive. So if there's a way to sort of become more efficient through new investments, greening buildings, for example, new technologies that could be leapfrogged, I think there'd be a great willingness to do that. I believe that about 50% of the capital stock in developing countries will be built up in the next 10 years. So there's an opportunity over there. We've got to put in the green considerations and the efficiency considerations so that we don't do what the West has done.
And does that mean that at a government level, both in developing countries and in the developed world, we need to change that fundamental structure that puts economic ministries, finance ministries, treasuries at the heart of government, and we need to maybe put the environment ministry or the sustainability ministry at the heart of government?
Yes, practically difficult to do. So I think what we have to show the finance ministry and the bureaucrats in the finance ministry, that it is in their best interest, at least in the medium term, to take into account some of these constraints that are imposed by environmental considerations. You know, they would love to do full cost pricing if we could tell them that's what we want. So there's a give and take between what people need to take to their governments and then how they will respond to that. So it has to happen at all levels.
Fascinating. Priya Shyamsundar, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, we're all familiar with the idea that the coastal cities of the world are threatened by drowning as a result of sea level rise as ice sheets melt. Many, of course, are built on the world's megadeltas. But new data being revealed today here at Planet Under Pressure suggests that cities built on deltas face drowning at a much faster rate because of man's activities. It turns out that 70% of the world's megadeltas are quite literally sinking, subsiding because of what mankind is doing, dramatically magnifying the effect of rising sea levels. Earlier today, I caught up with a couple of the scientists behind these important new results. Ramesh Ramachandran from the Indian government's National Centre for Sustainable Coastal Management and Dr. Hartwig Kremer from the Institute of Coastal Research in Germany.
Global deltas, actually, which are a center of societal concern and actually very much a center of coastal urbanization at the moment, hosting and accommodating most of the coastal people, some 500 million actually currently. They are facing an increasing risk of flooding. 70% of the largest megadeltas globally are prone to severe flood risks due to actually soil compaction and subsidence, which is unprecedented before in the last century, and it's largely due to human activity as compared to the sea level rise we talk about in the climate change context, and which is only in the order of magnitude of a couple of millimeters per year, whereas soil compaction, extraction of resources and urbanization lead to subsidence rates in the order of magnitude of centimeters, up to 10 or 15 centimeters on a yearly basis. And that obviously is a change as compared to the last 50 years, a signal of an Anthropocene, I would say.
It's an extraordinary thought that man's activities are effectively making the world's deltas sink. The world's deltas go from the Arctic to the tropics. What is the impact on the many human populations that live in these deltas?
Yeah, for example, we take about the Asian deltas, there are about 250 million people live along these deltas. When you take one example is the Ganges-Brahmaputra system, where you can see that the amount of sea level rise is increasing. So in the beginning we thought it's only due to the climatic event, but we also found that subsidence plays a major role. And we are trying to look at those issues. And when you take India as a subcontinent, you can see the number of dams which is built during the last 50 years is an enormous number of dams. So the amount of sediments and the water flow which is coming from the rivers to the coast, to the delta, is reduced to a large extent, which also causes serious problems in terms of groundwater exploitation, in terms of salt water intrusion and other aspects.
So that makes a bad problem worse, in effect?
Yeah, that's making a worse problem because of the human intervention. One is the climate change, the other, the accelerating effect is because of the human intervention, particularly we are doing within the basin, and also it is also affecting the water flow. For example, the major mangrove ecosystems, which will survive more only if you have more freshwater flow and then the seawater flow. That type of continuum is missing now.
What's the sort of timescale that we're talking about in terms of the need for action? If this human activity is accelerating the flooding, the sinking of deltas, how long have we got to do something about it, and what can we do about it?
Well, actually, I think we need to start immediately. I mean, we have now almost 700-fold more water trapped behind impoundments than some 100 years ago. And I think that it needs immediate action to deal with the river catchment and the delta coastal ocean system as a single system. And I think in terms of timescales, if you look at the European dimension, for instance, we have actually implemented legal administrative institutions such as the Water Framework Directive, which looks at the system in a holistic sense. That is a first step in the right direction. Of course, we talk about decades here. We talk about decades, and if we talk about sea level rise, we currently only know the scenarios that are put forward by the IPCC reports, and they claim that we have to accept something like 20, 70 centimeters of sea level rise, maybe on average 44. So we talk about the next 50 to 100 years. And if it comes to legal action and human activity and the science that feeds into that, it needs a joined up thinking from the catchment down to the continental shelf. And that needs a different way of science to feed into this in informed decision making.
Ramesh, how practical will it be finally for countries, particularly in, say, India and so on, China, where there are huge development going on in these deltas, huge numbers of people living, that the sort of action that needs to be taken, perhaps even maybe moving whole cities away, moving whole populations away from cities in deltas, is actually possible and can happen?
Yeah, we are now trying to sensitize this to the policymakers. For example, the big cities where we have, if you take about the Ganges, we have the Calcutta and Dhaka, two major cities right there, which is having population of more than 10 million. So until unless, like now, when you on the other side, when you look at the development is happening at a very fast rate. When you look at the number of ports and harbors which is coming up in these coastal states, it's going to again further worsen the problem. So unless we have, for example, we are looking at the vulnerability of the coastal areas on the whole, and then see how much of this area will be affected. And you can see during the last 15-20 years, the number of natural hazards has increased, and the intensity is also very high. It is not a very small. So when for example, the cyclone hits, there's a huge number of population losses there. So what we have to do is we are trying to sensitize. We are looking at these problem areas and make these policymakers to understand and see how best we could to control these activities. We need the development, also we need to conserve the environment. So there's a balance between the sustainable development and the environment, and the development is what we are looking for.
Fascinating and important piece of research. Now, one of the key outcomes of this conference has been the creation of the Future Earth Initiative. It's a new global platform with a huge ambition to transform sustainability research in the 21st century. So how will it work, and what does it want to achieve? Well, with me is Johan Rockström from the Stockholm Resilience Centre, who's been heavily involved in setting it all up. Johan, in a word, what is Future Earth? How will it work?
So just as you initiated, it's a concerted effort by the scientific community to step up to the challenges humanity is now facing. So move from the great advancements in science and understanding how the Earth operates and how humanity is impacting the Earth, to also address what are the response options, what are the innovation pathways and solutions to support humanity in a transition.
Solutions focused.
Solutions. Integrated science for solutions is the new added investment into the broad palette of Earth system science. That's why we describe Future Earth as an initiative to move global change research into the domain of global sustainability science. So basically, to put it simple, how does global environmental change research support a transition to a renewable energy future, a future of sustainable food production in the world, a future where you have an equitable sharing of resources, a future where you have a new economic paradigm to deal with global environmental change, which so far is seen mostly as an externality. So this is the kind of connection.
Future Earth is a place where economists, engineers, social scientists, as well as natural scientists, can all come together and should be, if you like, bidding for the funds to do the research to make the contribution.
Correct. And bidding to answer the most pressing questions humanity now have in terms of supporting understanding the risks in the Anthropocene, where we've entered a phase where humanity is the largest driver of change in the planetary scale, and also supporting transitions to a more desired future. So it's in service of society, and therefore, which is very unique, is that Future Earth is not only this integration between different sciences, it's a co-design with business, with civil society, with the large service providing UN agencies, and even with donors. So it's upfront designed together with stakeholders in society. So it's not only actionable or solutions-oriented, it's also more demand-driven.
And what are its goals, if you like, ambitions in terms of time? When do you think Future Earth will start producing concrete results?
Well, one should recognize that Future Earth builds on 30 years of Earth system science. It will evolve from the current global environmental change programs and its partners under the International Council for Science and the International Social Science Council. So it has a running start based on what is already there. And then it will, on top of that, launch a set of integrated themes, and they will be gradually being launched during the course of 2013. Future Earth has been announced here at Planet Under Pressure, but it will be launched in the Rio+20 conference in June 2012, and will be formally up and running from 1st of January 2013.
Can you give me some idea what those themes might be at this stage?
Well, this is work in progress right as we speak, so we are working on that. We're having consultations broadly in society to define them. But for example, we are clearly going to have a theme around how can science support a global transition to a low-carbon society, and in doing so, also addressing a rights-based or an equity dimension of how to, at the same time promote development among the world's poorest nations in the world. And this requires climate science to interact with governance research, to interact with behavioral sciences, and also to very closely interact with economics. The other question, which is a fundamental one, is how can we feed a world population of 9 billion people through sustainable agricultural practices, which at the same time preserve biodiversity and resilience in landscapes? A question that requires urgent action from again, climate scientists, hydrologists, agronomists, institutional scientists, social scientists, and in a very close partnership with business, the ag business, and all the way to governance. So there's a number of these big, what we've working-wise called mega themes, that now require integration and a concerted effort to solve big problems.
It's an exciting project in prospect. Johan Rockström, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the Daily Planet.
Thank you.
And that's it. That's our very last Daily Planet show from Planet Under Pressure come to an end. We do hope you've enjoyed it. We've certainly had a lot of fun putting it together, and it's been a privilege to talk to many of the inspiring people who've been here. It's also down to me to thank my brilliant production team of David Caffrey and Gwyn Williams, and to all the technical crews who've made it all go so very, very smoothly. The web stream from Planet Under Pressure continues now with the final plenary session looking beyond Rio+20 to the future. But from me, that's it. From Julian Rush, goodbye.